Anti-Fiction. This is a weekly nonfiction podcast where each week I, Christian Yates, am joined by two guest hosts to discuss a topic that I have chosen beforehand. Our topic this week is con artists, which is awesome. We had a good time the last time we did con artists. My guest hosts this week are Mike Yates.
I have returned.
He has returned. He's no longer just behind the scenes. And newcomer, Brandon Bruns.
Hello, hello.
Like I say, our topic is con artists. I picked, listen, I just realized that I never learned how to pronounce this guy's last name.
Oh, no.
But his name is William Chaloner, let's call him.
Shatner?
No, it's Chaloner. Chaloner.
Shatner.
Chaloner.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's like French.
Well, he's English.
Oh,
Chaloner,
but it's...
Maybe his family is French, but he's English, so it's Chaloner.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, his family is all
yeah,
like,
they didn't bother
it's
learning
Chaloner.
they didn't bother pronouncing it in the first place. And
Right.
Like, yeah, we're just gonna.
They're like, we're English. We're gonna do what we want.
Your way sounds too pretentious, coming from an English person.
Right? Yeah. Your correct pronunciation sounds pretentious.
Like that Jimmy Carr joke where he's like, "And I'm sorry if you don't understand my accent. This is just what words sound like when they're pronounced properly."
So William, we'll call him Old Willie. Well, that's what we'll call him.
Old Willie.
You can call him Old Willie.
So he was born in 1650. So this is
this is old school.
This is old school.
Way back when.
Yeah, this is pre-Revolutionary War. So this was back in the glory days for England before anybody beat them. According to Wikipedia, he is the son of a weaver, which sounds insulting, but is.
It sounds like a Monty Python insult.
It does. You son of a weaver.
Son of a weaver.
So he's the son of a weaver, but he never learned the weaver trade because he was a problem child. So his parents sent him to Birmingham in order to become an apprentice there.
As you do with your problem children at the time.
Right, yeah, you just send
get
him to
the- get rid
fucking
of him.
Birmingham. Are you
Like,
kidding?
man.
Off, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna have to kill him, but it turns out I could just send him away.
Right, and military schools hadn't been invented yet, so because everybody was just already in the military. Yeah.
Welcome to Birmingham. We've got all your problem children here.
Right. Evidently, though, because Birmingham at the time was notorious for counterfeiting, specifically groats, which is a coin that is worth about 4 pennies.
Okay.
So
American pennies or English pennies?
I imagine English pennies because it's England.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because
All the articles just said 4 pennies. I'm going to go with English pennies. Right. So there he became skilled in their production. So he's already counterfeiting. He's like a teenager, and he's already counterfeiting coins.
Is this the original Frank Abagnale
This is
Jr.?
the original Frank Abagnale
Is this
Jr.
the guy he was reincarnated from?
Yeah, probably. That would actually explain a lot of things that are going to happen later on.
He does this thing. He started flying airplanes in the 1600s.
Yeah. So he after he's in Birmingham, he's learning how to counterfeit. He moves to London, but he has trouble finding a job because of the Craftsman Guild there. So he establishes himself by making tin watches that contain dildos. That is not like a word for something else. It's just dildos. That's...
You gotta get your dildos somewhere.
Yeah. When I read that initially, I was like, okay,
This has got to be...
right, I
Dildo
was
used
like,
had to have meant something else
it
before.
had to mean something else, but it does not. Tin watches...
Like pocket watches.
Like pocket watches,
And that thing
from what I
contains
saw.
an
Yeah.
entire dildo.
That contains an entire dildo.
Did they have lower standards back then?
I
or-
don't know.
Was like the dildo one of the hands of the
Y-
watch?
Maybe.
That'd be incredible.
Or is it like those bow staffs that like extend out of nothing?
Or it's got like a little blowhole on it, right? So like you open the watch,
It's like
and
an
then
inflato
it pumps
dick.
up a dildo. Yeah.
Or you've got the dildo
Man,
on
they
your
were-
wrist and the pocket watch around there.
Right.
And now the hand is the
There you go.
dildo?
Yeah.
Is that how?
The whole hand.
Yeah, the whole hand.
The whole hand.
Man, that technology is ahead of its time because I can't figure it out.
Right. But apparently, like, this was like the 1670s, I think, at this point. So apparently this was like a time of burgeoning sexual experimentation. And I'm like,
This is like what?
in the 1600s, in
right
England?
After, well, this is like right after the Renaissance. So
I guess, yeah, but...
So they have to reinvent everything.
Yeah, well, they
Yeah.
already reinvented everything, and they're like, well, now we're bored. Let's reinvent
Right,
everything
let's
again.
reinvent sex, I guess. Who...
I guess. It's
Yeah.
one thing we really didn't do. I mean, we painted a bunch of naked people on the ceilings of churches, but
Right, but that's it.
We didn't actually do anything.
Right.
It was lost in the Dark Ages.
Yeah. So in 1684, he married Catherine Atkinson, probably. According to genealogical records, that might have been a different guy.
Probably married her.
But he definitely had several children. So probably this was the guy because this guy also had several children. But he then made a living recovering stolen goods by stealing them in the first place. And then reselling them, like, to, like, the original, like, they'd be like, I lost this thing, it was stolen, and he's like,
I can find it for you for a certain amount of money.
He's like, is it this? I'll recover it for you or whatever for, however many guineas or whatever. So that ended up making him a burglary suspect in 1690. So he was brought up on possible burglary charges. From what I see, he was not actually convicted. So at the time, England was experiencing some problems with their silver coins because of counterfeiting. So coins would be clipped around the edges, which would literally reduce their value because they were worth less because they were made out of silver. So they would clip the edges just a little bit, melt down that silver, and then once you got enough coins where you clip the edges, you could make new coins. Mm-hmm. To get around this, they started engraving the edges. They were like, oh, okay, all right, so you're going to clip the edges. We're going to make an engraving around it, so that way we'll know if they've been clipped. So counterfeiters started using molds and dyes to make a mold of that engraving and then melting it down, putting it in the mold, and then now it's got the engraving around the edge too.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Oh, it's almost as like these countermeasures don't actually fucking work.
Right? So the coins ended up being worth more in places like Paris and Amsterdam, so then coins were shipped abroad. They shipped them out. So they had less real currency in the country of England. And by 1696, counterfeit coins made up 10% of the nation's currency. All of the nation's currency, only 90% of it is legitimate coins. In order to...
It's a substantial amount when you think about it.
I feel like if it's that bad, it almost doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, fucking counterfeit them. Fine.
Just do it.
Do it.
Have whatever money you
Don't
want.
let your
Right.
dreams be dreams.
In order to track down counterfeiting rings, the Treasury brought in Sir Isaac Newton.
No way.
Physicist and mathematician, not lawyer or investigator, Sir Isaac Newton.
The Sir
Yeah.
Isaac Newton that we know
If the
and love
coin
today.
Right.
it starts moving, and then
Right.
stops moving without any other forces acting upon it, it is therefore counterfeit.
Right? He's like, I came up with the theory of gravity after seeing somebody drop a bunch of counterfeit coins. So, Chaloner was part of one of the many coining gangs that existed at the time, and was actually teaching the techniques of molding milled edges. So, he was one of the guys who was at the forefront of, oh, they're going to put engraving on the edges. Fuck them. We're going to do it anyway and fucking put engraving on our edges. He in 1691, he started producing French pistoles. I don't know.
Pistol, the guns.
No. It's a coin.
Oh, it's a coin also named pistol?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're gold coins, which are worth about 17 shillings in English money.
Learning
Right?
so much.
So he started producing counterfeit French coins using silver alloys, no gold involved, and only a little bit of silver. But the coins themselves were gold, so that he made them look gold.
So did he make those out of like British coins or?
Yeah, like they would like take, because like they ended up being worth a little bit more than English coins. So he was like, we can get more money if we counterfeit these fucking French coins and not even use real gold, just use the silver we have left over.
That's a smart way to do it.
Right? It's fucking genius. And he also started counterfeiting English guineas. And then he bought a house with the money that he fucking obtained from his counterfeiting.
What was the housing market like back then?
You know, probably not great, I imagine.
Well, I mean, it's a few generations after
Considering
the
how
plague.
much counterfeiting was going on, I have to imagine there was a house market crash.
Was it better
well, I mean,
or
like-
worse than 2008?
You know, probably better.
Okay.
Honestly,
Gotcha.
like I imagine that throughout the course of history, it was always better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Otherwise,
Well,
it
I
wouldn't
mean,
have crashed
In fairness to the
because
2008
it wouldn't have had
crash,
anywhere, it wouldn't have gone up, right? So-
in fairness to the 2008 crash, at least in terms of history, the plague wasn't pretty recent. So
yeah, that is true.
yeah.
So he bought
Just a little perspective.
he buys a house and starts dressing like a gentleman, right? So he goes basically overnight from being in like tattered, raggy clothes to dressing in suits and like walking around with a
should have,
cane and a
like-
top hat and a monocle.
He should have eased himself into it.
You
It's
know,
like that. It's like in
probably.
Breaking Bad when Walt makes all the money and then immediately goes out and buys 2 really nice cars, and it's like, well, that looks fishy now, dude.
I haven't seen Breaking Bad except for I think the first season.
Yeah.
So I don't get that joke, but yes,
I mean,
it's
that's
exactly
like
that.
that's all there is to it. There's not much more to the
Oh,
reference
okay,
you need
cool.
to get.
So he starts riding around in carriages, dressing in fancy clothes to put on this air of being a gentleman, while all the while he is scamming the British government out of just so much money. And then he abandons his family because
As you do.
fuck them.
But maybe they're starting to get suspicious or something.
Maybe.
Or maybe they sucked at counterfeiting. He's like, I gotta cut you guys loose.
That's
You're
also
not-
a possibility. Or he was afraid that they would turn him in or something if they found out, so he just abandons them so that way they never see him again. But he starts having affairs with like so many female coiners, just so many. And then he starts producing machine-struck coins, recruiting Thomas Holloway and John Peers. Now, John Peers was brought before the courts in 1697 on a completely unrelated charge from counterfeit coinage. But as part of his plea, he denounced Chaloner's operation. So Chaloner had bought this house out in the middle of nowhere where people wouldn't hear the sounds of machine counterfeiting, which apparently was very loud. And they were just making coins day and night there. And then so this guy, John Peers, when he gets arrested, he's like, no, you don't want me. You want William. He's the one making all the counterfeit coins. And they were like, this isn't even about the fucking coins. But it doesn't even lead to William's arrest. They arrest Thomas Holloway. That's the only guy that they can ever charge with anything related to the coin scams. So at this point, so before even all of that happens, right? We're in 1692. Chaloner decides to target the Royal Mint by offering to be its overseer. Basically, he's like, man, there's a lot of counterfeit coins circulating the market, and I think I know how to stop that. Meanwhile, he's the one putting all the fucking coins in the market. So he starts talking about how like they need to extend the treason law to include counterfeiting, adjust the silver value, make the impressions deeper so that coiners' tools wouldn't be able to do it. And that almost works until they start looking into him and seeing that he's kind of sketchy. So in 1696, I'm sorry. Let me back up a little bit. In 1693, he started. So the Jacobites, which let me pull that up here real quick.
Sounds like a cult.
Apparently it's a political movement.
Cult.
So
It's a cult.
Well, what's the
sure,
difference?
it's
You
politics.
can't
It's basically
change my
a
mind.
So they were looking to, the idea was to restore the houses of Stuart to England, and William Chaloner did not like that, so he started throwing so many of them under the bus. So anytime that, like, some counterfeiting thing was happening, he would be like, I know who it is, and he would point the finger at these Jacobites and then get rewarded for his information.
So he's getting a monopoly on the counterfeiting industry.
Yes.
Was he able to do it
Well, not
anonymously,
even that.
or-
They weren't even, like, necessarily involved
Right.
in the counterfeiting. He would just be like, it's these motherfuckers over here, and, you know, the government was like, well, we don't like them either, so it must be them. And then, so, for example, on June 1st, 1693, he was entertaining some Jacobites in his home and, like, planted counterfeit coins on them and then informed the police, and then they came and arrested a bunch of Jacobites, and he was given £1,000 as a reward.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I feel like
that's
he's pretty
What's
good at
that in
this.
today's money?
good question.
Multiple
I didn't
hundreds of
look it up.
thousands, right?
Yeah,
That's gotta
probably.
be.
And then here's the thing: is that probably he took the £1,000 and probably clipped the edges and made a bunch of more coins. So that's what he starts doing for the next several years. He's just like, oh well, you know, these Jacobites over here. Let's arrest them. They're clearly. Anyway, so in 1694, after years of rampant coin fraud, the Bank of England goes, you know, maybe we should print money on paper. That should be more difficult to counterfeit. So they're on, like, special marbled paper, which Chaloner already just had large stocks of. So he has it delivered to his home, and he starts producing his own 100-pound banknotes. This was not a felony. Coin fraud was a felony. Paper money fraud was not until 1697.
Is it because of him?
I have to imagine.
It's those golden years where you can just make as much money as
Yeah,
you want.
for 3 years he was able to just print money all he wanted without it being a felony. I mean, maybe it might be a misdemeanor, but I mean, it would not be
the
a
cops go up
felony
and
charge.
just like, don't you do that?
Yeah. Hey,
no,
you know,
no.
you really
Finger
shouldn't.
wagging.
You shouldn't.
really shouldn't. Yeah, well,
print
I'm
that
going to.
money.
Yeah, but I'm going to
That's
anyway.
not cool, man.
Highly frowned upon. Yeah.
What are you gonna do about it,
Yeah.
officer?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's not illegal.
Twiddling your thumbs, with your hands behind your back, kicking dirt and stuff.
So the very first time that any counterfeit bills were ever spotted were in August of 1695, which was 2 months after their introduction. Yeah.
Pretty fast.
So, yeah, the paper was traced to Chaloner, and then he immediately turned King's evidence and surrendered his entire stock and named other conspirators to give him credibility and exposed a major fraud against the bank, probably one that he was involved with himself.
Probably when he started.
Probably.
We'll never know.
So he testified before the courts and turned over all these other people, which gave him immunity. And then also for his efforts, he received formal thanks from the Bank of London, or the Bank of England, and received £200 from the bank and kept all of his profits from the counterfeiting.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
yeah. He saw no jail time for it, but he got all these other people arrested, probably more Jacobites.
Fucking Jacobites.
Yeah. So after this, he also turns in one of his friends that he had taught how to counterfeit. So he turns him in, and the guy Aubrey Price was condemned to death on a counterfeiting an excheque, and was hanged in June of 1698.
Jesus. Counterfeiting
Yeah.
is a capital offense, I guess.
It is now, yeah. Now that they realized that people can do it and it wasn't a felony, they were like, fuck, and they made it a felony, and they made it punishable by death.
And they grandfathered everyone in.
Yes. So then he moves on to lottery ticket scams, which I did not realize was a thing in the 1690s. So in 1698, he engraved a copper plate of tickets for the lottery, which again was not a felony. But he covered his tracks anyway and hid the plate between printing sessions. So another coiner named David Davis tells the Secretary of State.
Uncle David?
Right, that was the name of our uncle. So he tells the Secretary of State about this, and a warrant was issued for Chaloner's arrest. And then he was arrested in October of that year and imprisoned in Newgate. And while Isaac Newton was continuing to gather evidence for his final trial, right? Yeah.
It's so funny to me that Isaac Newton is like in on this whole thing.
I know, right? I feel like of all the people, like, were there no lawyers?
No,
nothing.
Well, it's like playing Assassin's Creed 2 and they throw Leonardo da Vinci in the game.
Yeah, right.
Hey,
I know that
you're
guy.
Step around the corner, and then
Right.
Leonardo da Vinci had lunch with him.
Honestly,
like
it
that.
sounds like lazy writing, doesn't it? It's just
Sounds like lazy writing.
it's just like, and
They're-
then
like, they make
Sir
the-
Isaac Newton was there.
Yeah, they
Oh,
make this
okay.
guy, like they make this guy's life into a movie, and his people think this is a shoehorned in character
Right.
just to get some sort
Isaac
of historical
Newton.
perspective or something.
Really?
He wasn't real. He was really there, people.
Meanwhile, George Washington was.
Yeah, right.
Meanwhile, at the end of the game, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln step out of the magic portal to help you fight aliens. That's the ending of Conduit 2. I shit you not.
Shit.
They never made Conduit 3.
Yeah, I don't imagine. So Newton was devoted to completing the investigation of Chaloner, and he used a comprehensive network of spies and informants, and took statements from all of his old contacts. Chaloner's brought before the judge in 1699, and the judge, Sir Salathiel Lovell, which is a stupid name, we'll call him Sal. So Judge Sal had a reputation as a hanging judge. So basically, if you were convicted, you were getting hanged. And Chaloner had to conduct his own defense without any prior knowledge of Newton's case or the evidence or the witnesses. He just had to be like,
Nah, man, I
not
didn't do
guilty.
it. Didn't do it, man.
I pinky swear I didn't do it.
This
If
was
it
before
don't
the
fit,
public
You must
defender.
acquit.
Yeah, there you go. So he faced 2 indictments for treason. One was for coining the French coins that he did in 1692, and then the other for coining crowns and half-crowns in 1698. And then, like the series finale of Seinfeld, Isaac Newton brings in, like, just this parade of witnesses from all through Chaloner's career. He's
From
like
every season.
From every season, it's like the old lady that Jerry steals the ham from in season 4, and now she's in here. Like, all of these people, like, just person after person that, like, people that had been convicted because Chaloner threw him under the bus, like other informants that Chaloner had worked with, and he didn't know that they were working for Newton. And then a guy who also was aware that he had done the lottery scam. So just all these people come in and they're like, yeah, he's fucking awful. And then Chaloner decided to plead insanity. And he pretended to be crazy. But then in court, he resorted to insulting all parties and claimed that they were committing perjury to save their own necks, and that the charges were outside of the jurisdiction of where he was being charged. So the jury only needed a few minutes to reach a verdict.
Man, this guy's an asshole.
And
Should we
he
just
was-
put him in prison? Yeah, let's just put him in prison.
Yeah, right.
It'll be easier that way.
Well, they got that hanging judge there, so.
So he was sentenced the next day, and yeah, he over the next 2 weeks he wrote a series of letters to Newton, the supervising magistrate, and they were aggressive, blame-shifting, begging, and accusatory and rambling. So maybe he was crazy. Maybe. None of them replied once. But his final letter to Newton concluded, "Oh, dear sir."
Hey, fuck you.
"Oh, dear sir, do this merciful deed. Oh, my offending you has brought this upon me. Oh, for God's sakes, if not mine, keep me from being murdered. Oh, dear sir, nobody can save me but you. Oh, God, my God, I shall be murdered unless you save me. Oh, I hope God will move your heart with mercy. Pity to do this thing for me. I am your near murdered humble servant."
That sounds like when you have to write an essay in school that has to be a certain amount of words.
Yeah,
And you're just
yeah.
circling around the same stuff.
And there was no punctuation there, by the way. That's why that was difficult for me to read. No punctuation.
I feel your pain.
No line breaks.
I love the ending. It's like, hey, it's me. I'm about to die.
Right?
I'll do anything.
Please don't let them kill me, even though you're the one that suggested they kill me.
But like, don't.
Please. So that was his last letter to Newton, and then he was hanged at the gallows. So.
He's sitting in his cell thinking, this'll work.
Yeah,
Boom.
right. He's like, he's a good Christian man. He won't let them send me to heaven or
And
hell or
there's
wherever.
a snap cut to him swinging from a rope.
Yeah. Oh, please don't let them kill me. I'm your near murdered humble servant.
This is a good idea.
But anyway, so yeah, that's the end of William Chaloner, the greatest coin counterfeiter that England has ever seen. And he dead. He got very dead. It didn't end nearly as nicely as Frank Abagnale.
I would
Jr.
argue it ended more abruptly.
It did, yeah. So that's my story, you guys. Mike, do you want to share your story with
I
us?
could go next. So,
Awesome.
like most of the people in the country, I think right now I've been playing a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2.
Sure.
So I'm in a Rudy Tooty cowboy shooty kind of mood, and so I've got the story of Jefferson Randolph Smith, a good old time West con man.
Nice.
So Jefferson Smith was born in Coweta County, Georgia, to a family of education and wealth. His grandfather was a plantation owner and a popular Georgia senator and legislator, and his father was an attorney. The family, however, met financial ruin close to the end of the Civil War because,
Right.
Confederate state. And
Yeah, I mean, when
slavery is no longer a thing. So
when your main source of labor is slaves, then
and your main job was to a government that no longer exists.
Also
so
true.
On both fronts, they got him.
Yeah.
It's like, man.
yeah, and then the attorney was well, your
Well, I mean,
honor.
Now he's like,
maybe.
well, like he's passed the bar in a state that no longer exists.
Well, that's true.
So,
That is true, yeah.
He's got to retake the
Right.
bar and all that stuff.
Time
So
to
anyways-
time to get your degree from America now, buddy.
Yeah. We only accept them American doctorates. So in 1876, the family moved to Round Rock, Texas, to start over, which is where Jefferson began his career as a confidence man. So he spent the next. He left home in 1877, just a year after, and spent the next 22 years as a professional bunco man and boss of an infamous
That
gang.
sounds made up. What the fuck's a bunco man?
A bunco man is basically just a confidence trick used to defraud a person or group after gaining their confidence. So it's like you get people to trust you, and then you steal all of their money.
Oh, okay, so it's like an old-fashioned word for grifting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially.
I got buncoed.
Because as we go on, we'll find out that is exactly what he does all the time for the rest of his life.
Awesome. All right, I'm so ready for this.
Yeah, so for the next 22 years, he works as a professional bunco man and boss of an infamous gang of loyal swindlers known as the Soap Gang.
Soap gang?
Yeah, that also sounds made up.
Yeah.
Where did they get that name?
We'll get to that because that name comes from his most famous.
They were real
or
big
should I
fans of the movie Fight Club.
Oh,
And-
gotcha.
Well,
gotcha.
that the name comes from the gang's most famous, or I guess infamous, con that they did, which we'll get to because it's interesting. It's like kind of the same that you would expect, but also different enough to where you can see why people fell for it.
Okay.
So the gang would move from town to town, plying their trade on their unwary victims. The principal method of separating victims from their cash was the use of the short con, which, in case anyone can't figure out that means,
It's the opposite of a long con.
Yeah, it's just swindles that were quick and needed little setup and few helpers. They often didn't yield as high rewards, but they were pretty easy to pull off.
Just something to do in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, the short cons would include, like, the shell game where you just, like, oh, what's under which shell's the ball under?
Right, but there was, like, a magnet, and you just, whichever one they picked, you click the magnet and make sure that...
Yeah. Or just through sleight of hand, you remove the ball entirely, and they're like, yeah, there's no ball under any of them. Same thing with, like, 3-card monte and just rigged poker games.
Nice.
So, it is a little unclear, but... sometime in the late 1870s or early 1880s, Smith began cheating crowds with a ploy the Denver newspaper dubbed the prize soap racket. So Smith would open up his tripping keister, which I guess is an old-timey word for a display case on a tripod.
Sure.
On a busy street corner, and pile up ordinary soap cakes onto the top of the tripod.
Okay, so this is where they get the name the Soap Gang then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as he began to expound their wonders, as he spoke to the growing crowd of curious onlookers, he would pull out his wallet and begin wrapping paper money ranging from $1 up to $100 around a select few of the bars of soap.
Okay.
He then wrapped plain paper around all of the bars so that none of the money could be seen. He appeared to mix the money-wrapped packages in with the wrapped bars containing no money and then sold the soap to the crowd for $1 a cake. A shill planted in the crowd would buy a bar, tear it open, and loudly proclaim that he had won some money, waving it around for all to see. The performance had the desired effect of enticing the sale of more packages. More often than not, victims bought several bars before the sale was completed. Midway through the sale, Smith would announce that the $100 bill still remained in the pile, unpurchased. Then he would auction off the remaining soap bars to the highest bidders. Through manipulation and sleight of hand, he hid the cakes of soap wrapped with money and replaced them with packages holding no money.
Sure.
So none of the ones that anyone was buying actually contained a dollar bill of any value. So the only money won went to plants.
Nice. See, I feel like...
in order to increase sales.
Yeah, I mean, you got to spend money to make money, right? So, like, you maybe have your shill that, like, wins a tenner, right? And then I feel like if you're selling them for, like... $1, then breaking even on some of those bars of soap is okay. So you wrap a $1 bill around it, and then you're selling those, and people are like, well, I mean, I broke even, so that's kind of cool. And then you have some people who did kind of win money. Mm-hmm. That's what I would have done, you know?
I feel like shills are like an important part of so many
Western
cons.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For
Same
sure.
thing like with magicians and stuff. You always put up a setup so that way you don't have the one random asshole like in the Prestige who can just shove their finger in the trap and break people's fingers.
I was actually reading up a little bit on shills, and it turns out there's like more things than you'd even imagine would use them, like even politicians at the time.
Oh yeah. Like planning people to ask specific questions in a press conference thing. Yeah, I believe it.
Now highly frowned upon.
It's all fake news anyway.
I mean, yeah. It's all fake news. All of it. Everything.
Even this. This show is nonfiction and it's fake.
This is fake
We're
news.
not real.
Yeah.
No, we're not real.
We're actually just computer programs. According to Elon Musk, we're all in the Matrix.
I believe it.
Yeah.
That man knows things that the rest of us mere mortals, I don't think, can comprehend. So on one occasion, Smith was arrested by policeman John Holland for running his soap cell racket. While writing in the police logbook, Holland had forgotten Smith's first name and just wrote Soapy.
Soapy.
So from there on, he had the moniker of Soapy Smith.
Soapy Smith.
So the nickname stuck. And all across the western United States for the next 20 years, he was referred to as Soapy Smith.
Soapy Smith is coming to town.
Soapy Smith.
How'd your soap?
I think you can trust a guy like that. Like it's when you get like Jack the Ripper, you start getting into this thing. It's like, well, that guy's kind of probably a little sketchy.
Right. Soap is slippery, and so is he. So I feel like it just works on a lot of levels.
Yeah, but soap is also clean, so it's trusty, and it
lulls
you into a false sense of security.
Illusion of cleanliness. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So The soap sell, along with his other scams, helped finance Smith's criminal operations by paying graft to police, judges, and politicians, through which he was able to build 3 separate major criminal empires.
Nice.
First in Denver, second in Creede, Colorado, and then the third in Skagway, Alaska.
Okay, that one seems a little removed.
It'll make sense.
Okay.
So
they were selling ice to the Alaskans.
In 1879, Smith arrived in Denver for the first time, and by 1882, he had successfully built the first of his empires. Conmen normally moved around to keep out of jail, but as Smith's power and gang grew, so did his influence at City Hall, allowing him to remain in the city, protected from prosecution. In 1887, he was reputedly involved with the most of the criminal bunco activities in the city. Newspapers in Denver reported that he controlled the city's criminals and underworld gambling and accused corrupt politicians and the police chief of receiving graft from him, which they did.
Sure.
In 1888, Smith opened the Tivoli Club on the southeast corner of Market and 17th Streets. I don't know if any Denver listeners, if those streets still exist, and if everyone knows
I'm sure
about
they
them.
do.
I'm sure they do. And it's like they just disappeared. They got snapped.
Right, yeah, there you go.
So legend has it that the above entrance of the stairway leading upwards to the gambling games was a sign that read Caveat emptor, Latin for let the buyer beware.
Yep.
Smith's younger brother, Bascom Smith, joined the gang and operated a cigar store that was a front for dishonest poker games and other swindles, operating in one of the back rooms. Other operations included fraudulent lottery shops, a sure thing stock exchange, so like Ponzi schemes almost, fake watch and bogus diamond auctions, and the sale of stocks in non-existent businesses.
Yep.
Ponzi scheme.
Yep.
Yes.
There you go. That's classic Bernie.
Because of the bribes, some of the police officers patrolling the streets would not arrest Smith or members of his gang. Other officers feared Smith's quick and violent anger. Occasionally, Smith or one of his men would be arrested, so friends, attorneys, and associates were always ready to obtain their quick release from jail. A voting fraud trial after the municipal elections of 1889 focused attention on corrupt ties and payoffs between Smith, the mayor, and the chief of police.
See, that could never happen today.
No.
That voter fraud has been eliminated.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
Only people who are in this country and people who are still alive vote.
Yep.
Certainly
This
no
is
one
true.
else.
Certainly no one outside of our borders or underneath our soil.
Yep.
Yep.
Anyways. A combination referred to in the local newspapers as the firm of Londoner, Farley, and Smith. The mayor lost his job, but Smith remained untouched.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Smith opened an office in the prominent Chever
He's
block,
soapy. He's slippery.
1 block south of his Tivoli Club, from which he ran his many operations. This also fronted a business tycoon's office for high-end swindles. Smith was not without enemies and rivals for his position as the underworld boss. He faced several attempts on his life and shot several of his assailants. He became known increasingly for his gambling and bad temper.
He's sounding more and more like a mob boss. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, and this was the start of the mob.
But he never forgot his roots.
He kept selling soap.
In 1892, with Denver in the midst of anti-gambling and saloon reforms, Smith sold the Tivoli and moved to Creede, a mining boomtown that had formed around a major silver strike. Using Denver-based prostitutes to cozy up to property owners and convince them to sign over leases, he acquired numerous lots along Creed's Main Street, renting them to his associates.
He's really expanding his enterprise. This guy actually is an inspiration.
Yeah. After getting enough allies, he just announces that he's now the camp boss. He's like, "Yep, this mining town, it's mine now," and the people are just like,
Yeah.
all right.
I'm not going to do anything about
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. That tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see I can follow your logic here.
Yes.
I'm not going to stand up to Soapy.
No.
Otherwise, you'll end up with a horse head or something.
I hear he got that nickname because he puts soap in a sock and beats people with it.
Don't pick him up in the prison.
With brother-in-law and gang member William Sidney Light as deputy sheriff of Creede, Smith began his second empire, opening a gambling hall and saloon called the Orleans Club. He purchased and briefly exhibited a petrified man named McGinty for an admission of 10 cents. While customers were waiting in line to pay their dime, Smith's shell and 3-card Monte games were winning dollars out of their pockets.
Naturally.
something to do while you wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Might win some money. Pay for the admission to get in.
Basically free at that point.
Pay a dime, win a dime.
And then help us pay rent.
Yeah.
That I own.
Yeah.
Smith provided an order of sorts, protecting his friends and associates from the town's council and expelling violent troublemakers. Many of the influential newcomers were sent to meet him. Smith grew rich in the process, but again was known to give money away freely, using it to build churches, help the poor, and bury unfortunate prostitutes.
Right. See, this is
It's all about
good
giving
guy
back.
Soapy.
It's all about giving back.
Yeah.
So Creed's boom very quickly waned, and corrupt Denver officials sent word that the reforms that were coming to an end, like the saloon and gambling reforms.
Sure.
Smith took McGinty back to Denver. He left at the right time, as Creed soon lost most of its business district in a fire on June 5th, 1892. And among those buildings destroyed was the club that he was running out of.
Well. An act of God.
Yeah, so he moves back to Denver for a little while, just starts doing the exact same stuff over and over again, until eventually, in 1897, when the Klondike Gold Rush started.
Oh,
so
buddy.
that's why he goes to Skagway, Alaska, because the new California Gold Rush is now in Alaska.
There we go.
Get that gold.
So where he moved his operations to, I don't know how to pronounce this, Dyea and Skagway.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, Dyea is how it's spelled.
Daya, maybe.
Dyea, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the language of origin, so
I don't know.
that would be make it.
I'm sure it's Inuit.
It might be. Who knows?
Who knows?
His first attempt at occupying Skagway ended in failure when miners' committees encouraged him to leave the area after operating his 3-card Monte and pea and shell games on the White Pass Trail for less than a month. They're like, you should, as they cock their shotguns, probably leave. He traveled to St. Louis and Washington, D.C., and did not return to Skagway until late January 1898, where he set up his third empire, much the same as he did in Denver. And
If it ain't broke.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. He put the town's deputy U.S. Marshal on his payroll and began collecting allies for a takeover. Smith opened a fake telegraph office in which the wires went only as far as the wall. Not only did the telegraph office obtain fees for sending messages, but also cash-laden victims soon found themselves losing even more money in poker games with newfound friends.
Nice. Yep.
Friends being in quotations. And just about any time I say friends from here on, assume it's in quotations.
Yeah.
Telegraph lines did not actually reach or leave Skagway until 1901.
Oh, God. 3 years of that.
3 years, people thought they were sending telegraphs. Turns out they were just...
They just had a cup.
Why
They
do
were
I
just,
never
they
get
were
a reply?
They got a can on a string.
No matter how many of these I send out, my wife won't answer me. I don't understand
Yeah, just
it.
like tapping away and stuff.
Got
And
bad
just
news,
like...
buddy.
I want to see my kids, Karen.
Well, I would recommend divorce, buddy.
Right. And I can help you pay for that. You just give me $500 up front. I can turn that into
I'll send her the telegram about the divorce.
Yeah, there you go.
So Smith soon after opened another saloon named Jeff Smith's Parlor in March 1898 as an office from which to run his operations. Again, tried and true business practices here.
Sure.
Although Skagway already had a municipal building, Smith's Saloon soon became known as the real City Hall.
Ah.
Skagway was
That's
gaining,
where all the real wheeling and dealing is coming
Yeah.
out of.
Skagway was gaining a reputation as a hell on earth with many perils for the unwary. Smith's men played a variety of roles, such as newspaper reporters or clergymen, with the intention of
All right.
befriending a new arrival and determining the best way to rid him of his money.
Just whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know?
You're a religious man? Oh, well, I'm a priest. Give me your money.
Yeah, you look like
Right.
you would like to see a priest. How convenient.
Yeah.
For just $29.95.
Plus shipping and handling. The new arrival would be steered by his friends, air quotes, to dishonest shipping companies, hotels, or gambling dens until he was wiped out. If the man was likely to make trouble or could not be recruited into the gang, Smith would appear then in person and offer to pay his way back to civilization. When a vigilance committee, the Committee of 101, threatened to expel Smith and his gang, he formed his own Law and Order Society, which claimed 317 members to force the vigilantes into submission. Most of the petty
You
gamblers...
in what army? Fuck.
Most of the petty gamblers and conmen did indeed leave Skagway at this time, and Smith resorted to other means to appear respectable in the community. During the Spanish-American War in 1898, Smith formed his own volunteer army with the approval of the United States Department of War, known as the Skagway Military Company, with himself as its captain. Smith wrote to President William McKinley and gained official recognition for his company, which he used to strengthen his control of the town.
Naturally.
On July 4th, 1898, Smith rode as a marshal of the 4th Division of the parade, leading his army on his gray horse. On the grandstand, he sat beside the territorial governor and other officials. This guy, on July 7th, 1898, John Douglas Stewart, a returning Klondike miner, came to Skagway with a sack of gold valued at $2,700, which in 2017 money is $82,620.
He just came with a sack of 82 grand.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a bold move, Cotton. We'll see if it pays off.
Yep. So, 3 gang members convinced the miner to participate in a game of 3-card Monte.
Naturally.
When Stewart balked at having to pay his losses, the 3 men grabbed the sack and ran. The Committee of 101 demanded that Smith return the gold, but he refused, claiming that Stewart had lost it fairly. On the evening of July 8th, the Vigilance Committee organized a meeting on the Juneau Wharf. With a Winchester rifle draped over his shoulder, Smith began an argument with Frank H. Reed, one of 4 guards blocking his way to the wharf. A gunfight, known as the Shootout on Juneau Wharf, began unexpectedly, and both men were fatally wounded. Smith's last words were, "My God, don't shoot."
Well, how did he die?
It's too late for that, buddy. This isn't even a real rifle. This is a cane.
This is an umbrella. This is a stapler. This is a stapler, man. A letter from Sam Steele, the legendary head of the Canadian Mounties at the time, indicated that another guard, Jesse Murphy, may have fired the fatal shot. Smith died on the spot with a bullet to the heart. He also received a bullet in his left leg and a severe wound on the left arm by the elbow. Reed died 12 days later with a bullet in his leg and groin area. The 3 gang members who robbed Stewart received jail sentences. So Soapy Smith was buried several yards outside the city cemetery. Due to the way Smith's legend had grown, on every year on July 8th, wakes are held around the United States in his honor. His grave and saloon are on most tour itineraries of Skagway. And thus ends the legend of Jefferson Randolph Soapy Smith II.
That was amazing.
Being killed in a shootout at the ripe old age of 38.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna be a con man, you got to be prepared.
That's the way to go, man.
Yeah, that is.
That's so classic.
Impressive.
Getting killed by the guy you tried to rob.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you going to do to me?
Right.
What are you gonna do? Shoot me?
No, for the love of God, don't shoot.
And then he does.
Well, thank you.
Man, I could never have seen this coming. There's no way to prepare for that.
So, Brandon, what have you brought for us today?
Well, I did a little bit of research on something also a little old westerny.
Yay!
Nice.
Yeah. I was looking into snake oil here.
I tell you what, for the last 20 minutes, I've just had that saloon piano
Rudy
music
Tooty
in my
cowboy.
head, and I
That's-
don't see it
that's
ending.
good. Yeah, that's going to keep
Rudy
going.
Tooty,
Yeah.
cowboy shooty.
So snake oil. I was just kind of wondering where it came from. Well, it's an old Chinese medicine, right? And it's traditional. And
Okay. So snake oil itself is real. It's
yeah, it's real traditional Chinese medicine. It's got a lot of what was it?
Antioxidants.
yeah.
Antioxidants, sure. Omega-3. That was it.
There we
That's
go.
what, fish oil has. So it's kind of good for
Okay.
you in that right way, but it's not going to be what people tend to believe it would do.
Right. It's not a
at the
cure
time.
all.
Right. A panacea, as they would say it is, more of a placebo.
Right. So just as a PSA for anybody listening that might be taking snake oil,
Yeah.
it's not doing much.
It's got omega-3. That's about it. It's not going to cure your strange rash or.
What the
just
fuck
got
is
those-
omega cure or omega-3 cure?
And
Well, it's
joint
basically
pain,
it's just
I
like
guess.
a branched chain amino acid, right? Is that what omega-3s are?
I have no fucking
I'm
clue.
going to say that sounds right.
Yeah.
Well, so good luck, I guess. If you're taking snake oil, you probably need it for something, and you're doing it wrong.
Oh, it can reduce your blood pressure.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
All
It's
right.
not terrible, you know?
Stop drinking coffee.
Right.
Fixed.
Drink some snake oil instead.
Well, no, or you could keep drinking coffee, not
And just
murder
put the
everybody,
snake oil
just
in
put
it.
the
There we
snake
go.
oil. Yeah.
New
Yeah, there you
coffee
go.
talk.
That way, you get the same effects, and you don't want to murder anybody.
Snake oil creamer.
Right.
Because now you get your coffee.
So anyway, from the 18th to 20th century, it became sold all around the U.S. and Great Britain as a cure-all.
Sure.
And
Why
now,
not?
What was sold was generally just a mix of stuff they found around the house.
Here's a vial containing dust and
Clorox.
Drano.
Right, yeah, pretty much. It'd be like herbs, spices, just
Which is
whatever
how they found
compounds.
out bleach kills you if ingested.
Right. Well, actually, snake oil usually would end up being pretty safe. Although a lot of other alternative medicines at the time would have dangerous stuff in there, like
Right.
bleach or whatever.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. If you con them once, you want to continue conning them.
You
so
know, I
then
mean,
dying really is
technically,
not in your
I
best
think
interests.
if you put bleach in a medicine, that's gonna clear everything out once,
Oh, yeah.
and then that's it for you.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Just inject this directly into your veins. There you go, and now you're convulsing. Do you feel better?
You don't have that pain anymore.
Yeah.
Do you? New pain for you. So anyway, the idea of a snake oil salesman, it became kind of a stereotype in Western movies, right?
Right.
So that's where the idea kind of became
And in Red
more
Dead
famous.
2,
And
there
in
are
Red Dead.
plenty of
Here we
snake
go.
oil salesmen.
It would generally a doctor, and here we have those air quotes again, doctor.
Right.
He would,
Dr. Soapy.
Dr. Soapy, he would have his shill in the crowd.
Right.
As I would have some parallels here between this and our last story. And he'd be like, well, I got this amazing cure-all, and the shill in the crowd would be, well, it cured my something or the other. It fixed my smelling or my hearing. Or
My leg grew back.
My leg grew back. I got better,
I got
as they say.
Right.
cute.
And,
better.
of course, they'd sell as much as they could, and
Right.
then they'd skip town.
Right. Move on to the next town before
Right.
people
Like,
started dying of
oh,
bleach poisoning.
Oh, it takes a good day or so to work. They're out of there.
Right.
So
Just
get
apply
your snake
directly
oil.
to the forehead.
Right.
Right.
Apply directly to the forehead.
So I was trying to
Dead
find
on.
a good famous snake oil salesman,
Sure.
and I found one. It's Clark Stanley here. And-
Clark Stanley.
Right. And
That's a fake name.
it very well might
If
be.
he's smart, it would be.
Yeah, right?
Dr. quote unquote Clark Stanley. And he claimed to have gotten his recipe by studying for 2 years with a Hopi medicine man
Sure.
in Arizona. Now, this the whole snake oil thing, it came from China, so he's just kind of
You're right. It's bullshit.
bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And he would actually, in his demonstrations, he would kill a rattlesnake, and he would show an extraction process.
Is he selling snake venom to people and telling them it's medicine?
Well, actually, he's not. He
Okay.
would just kill the snake and then sell them something completely different.
All right, cool. This is the early days of PETA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He was actually at the 1893 Chicago World Columbia Expedition.
Okay.
Yeah, he was there selling his product. He was one of the people, and there was a lot of con artists at that.
Shit.
That I looked into.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it was one of the biggest world fairs that had
Yeah.
happened, and as far as I know, it might still be.
right.
All right, and he actually ended up having several production facilities. He actually got kind of big. Right?
Oh.
So eventually, here comes along the Food and Drug Act of 1906.
Oh God, this is
no.
gonna fuck him up.
This is
Damn
this
you,
is exactly.
government
And
sanctions.
this is kind of why he's famous today, is because he got caught.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
They
You're like,
figured it
see,
out. They're like,
they work.
we knew it. So, although about 10 years after the Food and Drug Act came along in 1916, they examined his concoction. Turns out it had mineral oil, fat, which was probably from beef, capsaicin, and turpentine. So what he was selling was a lot like Icy Hot.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
That you drink.
Yeah.
Drinkable icy. Hot.
Right.
Just drink this icy hot. You're gonna be
Then your
fine.
insides are gonna get really cold, and then they're gonna get hot for hours to relax it away.
Right. So,
That's just the snake oil working its magic. I mean, science.
right back.
Working its.
The panacea of today is Icy Hot.
Right.
Anyway, it was found to have no medical value, and he was sued by the United States government for $20. Which is-
$20.
$20 whole dollars.
$20.
Hashtag petty.
That's it. And now that's about $443.
$443.
And
That's
today-
not even worth the court
No,
costs.
it's not.
Right. The United States government is like, you're in a lot of trouble now, doctor.
Doctor.
You're gonna pay us $20, and he's like,
Yeah. All right.
I'm sorry.
What?
That's
$20?
It's like, okay.
Yes, and don't you dare counterfeit a penny of it. 20. Here's a 20.
So he
Take
does.
it, fucking.
Yeah.
I don't care.
My name's not even Charles Stanley. Clark
su-
Stanley. That's what
You're
it was.
suing a man that don't exist. Don't you look foolish?
And that was it. That's all he. That's the only punishment he ever got was the $20.
That's not even a slap on the wrist.
It's just
They're
a
like,
slap on the
this
wrist.
is going on your permanent
That's
record.
literally equivalent of a fucking speeding ticket.
Yeah, it's less than a speeding ticket.
I mean, depends on where.
Well, I
where
guess
you
in
are,
today's
yeah.
money, it was 443.
Yeah, that's 3 or 4 speeding tickets
At the time, speeding tickets didn't exist, though.
because.
What are you gonna do? Go too fast on your horse?
Yeah.
It only gets 1 horsepower,
sorry, do you know-
officer.
do you
Sorry,
know-
your
do you know-
buggy was going 2 miles per
Yeah,
hour over the
say,
speed
I
limit.
clocked you going 21 miles an hour.
How do you know I went that fast, officer?
The
I eyeballed
wind.
it.
Eyeballed it. Yeah.
I counted the seconds after you passed the tree, and then I passed the tree, and I divided by the integer necessary. Listen, math is hard.
I could explain it all, but that would take too long.
So that's the only punishment he got, though, was pay us $20. Not even like
As far as I could find, that was the only.
put him in the stocks or like
I know. I mean, they sued him for it, right?
right. So everybody knew, and then he just changed
So it
his
was
name.
a civil,
I mean, yeah,
so it was a civil suit.
he
and
did
it wasn't
kinda
a
lose
criminal
his-
suit. So like, that's about as punishment as a punishment can go for.
He
a
lost
civil
his
suit.
credibility, you know.
I mean, under that name, but like the internet didn't exist yet, so it's not like the internet is all over like Harvey Weinstein's a monster. It wasn't Clark Stanley's a monster. You didn't have that. Like,
Yeah.
how many people in the country had just never seen his fucking face?
Oh yeah, as
Yeah,
far
I
as
know.
we know, he could have just changed his name to something
Yeah.
else and just gone somewhere else.
My name is Stark Chanley.
I did not sell snake oil.
Right.
Definitely.
Didn't then, still don't now.
This,
Buy this.
this is iguana oil.
Much healthier.
This is
Yes.
chameleon oil. It'll turn you invisible.
Well, at that point, the Food and Drug Act was still up and going.
Right.
So
well,
maybe
yeah, that
he
is
learned
true.
his lesson.
It definitely
Maybe.
would have
Or
hampered,
he-
it would have not. It would have like reduced your want to do it then at that point because
I
then it
guess,
would be under
yeah.
more scrutiny.
I mean, but you could probably still get away with it until the FDA came in.
Yeah, but they would come in. Is the
Right, but then you just move towns and change your name again. It wasn't that hard.
Well, he was actually a pretty big company.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
He
okay.
But
would
what
actually
if-
like put out advertisements and
Oh,
he
okay,
had a
well, there
couple
you
of,
go, yeah.
Okay.
I say, well,
factors
what if
making
you
this
like
simple.
the town you're in, though?
Like he started off pretty
Yeah.
small.
Do you mean like in Music Man? Is that what you're going for? Like,
Yeah, sure.
oh man, it started out as a scam, but then I fell in love with the town and the librarian.
And
like,
and the kids who I told I would sell band instruments to, but
Right.
was totally not going to until I got called on my shit, and now I have to do it.
And then you become a productive member of the town.
I guess, yeah,
And all of a sudden, a conductor,
yeah,
and it works.
played by Matthew Broderick.
So-
well, that's crazy though.
So here's the fun thing: you can actually still buy snake oil.
Are you fucking serious?
Well, because
Yep.
actual snake oil is still.
but
an
you don't
omega-3.
drink it.
You
You,
can-
rub it on your skin.
You can
and,
buy it like online from traditional Chinese.
There's
merchants.
like
You know-
tablets, tablet versions of it.
but like the stupid thing is, right? So in order to get around the FDA, all you have to do is not say what it does.
Yeah.
You know that shit head on that I referenced earlier,
Yeah,
right?
applied directly to the
Right.
forehead. They don't say this reduces headaches.
It does not. It just shows people, and it's called head on, and they're rubbing it on their head, and you're
And
like,
they say
oh, it
apply
gets rid of
directly to the
headaches.
The
forehead.
silliest
yes.
Right.
commercial. If you
What's
haven't
this
seen
do?
it.
Oh my
Oh,
god!
it's,
Listen, even if you haven't seen that commercial, you know, head on, apply directly to the forehead,
Right.
over and fucking over
Yeah,
for
and it
30
just repeats
seconds.
that for about 15
Because they
20 seconds.
legally cannot say gets rid of headaches because it doesn't. So you can still do this shit. You just can't tell people it's a magic cure.
So now you just have to bank on people being dumb.
Yeah. Right.
Which back then it was just easy.
So have you bought snake oil then? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
You know, I kind of wish I had at
right.
this point.
And like
bought-
brought a sample for the
I
show.
mean, I bought fish oil before.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sure, but fish oil is different because it's not from snakes.
It's aquatic and
Doesn't
therefore
quite have-
natural.
Doesn't have the stigma behind it.
This fish oil shit sounds a lot like what that doctor was selling us a few years ago. It's not. Fish aren't even reptiles. Well, he said that pretty confident. He sounds educated.
I'm inclined to believe it and accept his word as gospel. Why are they all Southern all of a sudden?
Well, because it took place in the Old West, and I imagine everybody in the Old West had a Southern accent, even if they were in a northern state.
Oh yeah. He actually wasn't in a northern state.
Yeah.
He was in. I think it was Maine. I can't remember.
Oh, so he talks like this.
Yeah,
he
it was
pulls
like- it was
lobsters out from the bay.
It was like.
I'm sorry,
northeast.
is that Australian?
No, it's like it's semi-Bostonian. New Englander accents are all like that.
Yeah,
I
but
guess.
somehow
Get in
pretty
the
much
car, take out the garbage.
pretty much everyone in the late 1800s, early 1900s was the Wild West.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Everywhere was the Wild West, even the East.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, well, that was fucking stupid. Fuck snake oil. Fuck this doctor. I thought I had the dumbest guy, but like your guy was the dumbest. That was. I thought my guy who was like, I'm gonna con the Royal Mint. I thought that was the stupidest, but snake oil guy took the cake on that. The snake
$20.
oil cake.
It's all.
$20.
$20.
Yeah.
Don't you go doing it again. Hey, well, thank you guys for being on the show today. And listeners, thanks for checking us out. You can always follow us on the internet. We're on Instagram and Twitter at AntiFictionCast. You can always email us with questions, comments, suggestions. You want to scream at us, that's also fine. That's antifictioncast@gmail.com. And tune in next week. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.